The human named Kale walked through the gates of the dragon shelter, his boots crunching on the metal floor. The shelter was huge, filled with cages, small enclosures, and high-tech equipment. Dragons of all sizes were kept here, some sleeping, some pacing nervously, and some staring silently from behind bars. Most of them looked scared or sad, but none as much as the one in the far corner. Kale's eyes immediately found the smallest dragon in the shelter, a thin creature with dull, gray scales that looked like they had lost all their shine. Its eyes were wide and lonely, almost pleading, and it shivered as it pressed itself against the back of the cage. Kale felt a sudden tug in his chest. He had seen dragons before, but this one was different. It was not just afraid. It was broken. Every other dragon seemed to have some spark of life, but this one looked as if it had been waiting for someone to notice it for a very long time. Kale knelt slowly beside the cage, careful not to scare the dragon. "Hey there," he whispered, his voice soft but full of warmth. The dragon flinched at first, its ears folding back, but it didn't run away. It just stared, its large, sad eyes following him. Kale could feel a story behind those eyes, a story of loneliness, pain, and maybe betrayal. He had always believed that dragons were noble creatures, proud and fearless, but this one seemed almost human in its sorrow. The shelter workers passed by without a glance, busy with their tasks. They called the small dragon unremarkable, said it had no potential and no future. Kale didn't care about their words. He could see the dragon's potential hidden behind the sadness, the possibility of something great if only someone cared enough to help it. He spent hours observing the dragon from a distance, learning its small habits. It trembled when anyone came near, but it also had moments of curiosity, turning its head slightly to watch Kale's movements. He noticed how it flinched when a large dragon roared nearby, how it hid itself when the shelter staff tried to clean its enclosure. It was cautious, afraid of the world, but not completely hopeless. Kale decided he would come back the next day, and the day after, until he could gain its trust. On the second day, he brought small treats he had prepared, pieces of energy-rich food that dragons liked. He offered them slowly, letting the dragon sniff first, then take a bite. It was hesitant at first, but hunger and curiosity won. The small dragon nibbled the food, watching Kale carefully with those sorrowful eyes. Slowly, it moved closer, its claws tapping lightly on the floor. Kale smiled, feeling a connection forming, fragile but real. Over the next few days, Kale visited every morning. He sat by the cage, talking in soft tones, telling stories about the stars, about other dragons he had seen, about adventures he had dreamt of. The small dragon began to respond in its own way, tilting its head, making soft clicking sounds, and even moving closer to touch his hand with a claw. Kale knew he was breaking through the wall of fear the dragon had built over years of neglect. He wondered what had happened to it before it came to the shelter. Who had hurt it? Why had it been abandoned? The shelter records offered nothing useful. They only had the date of its arrival and some basic notes on its behavior. Kale felt a growing determination. This dragon would not stay sad and lonely forever. He had seen too many creatures like this, creatures with potential, creatures who could become legends if someone simply cared. One afternoon, a sudden noise startled both Kale and the dragon. A large, red dragon bellowed across the shelter, making the small one shrink into the corner of its cage. Kale put a protective hand on the cage, speaking softly to calm it down. He realized then how much this dragon trusted him already, trusting him enough to stay still and listen to his voice instead of running away. That small moment filled Kale with hope. He decided he would not just visit. He would find a way to help the dragon leave the shelter and experience freedom, adventure, and care. But he knew it would not be easy. The shelter was guarded, controlled, and the staff did not value the lives of dragons beyond their usefulness. Kale needed a plan, patience, and courage. Still, he could not ignore the growing feeling that this dragon was special, far more special than anyone realized. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the metal floors, Kale stayed by the cage longer than usual. The small dragon curled slightly, its body relaxing a little in his presence. He whispered promises he hoped it could understand. Promises of a life beyond sadness, of skies to fly in, of warmth and friendship. Kale left the shelter that evening with his mind full of plans and his heart full of determination. The small dragon watched him go, its eyes following his every step, perhaps sensing that someone had finally noticed it, someone who cared enough to change its life forever. As he walked away, Kale felt a strange excitement mixed with fear. He did not know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He had found a companion, a dragon that the world had forgotten, and together they might just create a story no one would ever forget. Kale returned to the shelter the next morning, his steps quiet but full of purpose. The small dragon was already awake, its dull gray eyes following him through the cage bars. Kale noticed it had moved slightly closer to the front of the enclosure since yesterday, a small but important sign of trust. He brought more treats today, a few pieces of nutrient-rich crystals that dragons loved, and set them carefully near the cage door. The dragon sniffed them cautiously, glancing at Kale as if questioning whether this human could be trusted. Kale spoke softly, "It's okay. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon's ears twitched slightly at the sound of his voice. Slowly, it stepped forward, its claws clicking softly on the metal floor. Kale held out his hand, not touching the dragon, just letting it see that he meant no harm. The dragon stopped, tilting its head, studying him carefully. Then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, it took a tiny step closer and nibbled at one of the crystals from Kale's hand. Kale smiled, feeling a small victory. He had broken through the first barrier. Over the next hour, Kale stayed near the cage, telling stories about distant planets, hidden valleys where dragons could fly freely, and other dragons he had met in his travels. The small dragon listened, its head tilting, its small body slowly relaxing. Kale noticed its scales glimmer faintly in the soft morning light, a hint of color that had been hidden beneath layers of sadness. He wondered what it would look like if it were truly happy, free, and cared for. For the first time, the dragon made a soft, musical sound, almost like a purr. Kale's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time he had heard any dragon make a sound that felt like recognition, like connection. He reached out a little closer, his fingers brushing the cage bars. The dragon flinched but didn't run. Instead, it inched forward, pressing its small head lightly against the metal, a silent acceptance of Kale's presence. Days passed in a similar pattern. Kale came each morning, bringing food, speaking softly, and observing. The dragon slowly gained courage, moving closer, testing Kale's patience, and responding with little clicks and chirps. Other dragons watched silently, some curious, some indifferent, but Kale focused only on the small gray dragon. One afternoon, a loud crash echoed through the shelter. A large dragon had knocked over a container of food, creating a chaotic mess. The small dragon shrank into the corner, trembling. Kale immediately rushed to calm it, speaking in his soft, steady voice. "It's okay. You're safe. Nothing will hurt you while I'm here." The dragon looked at him, eyes wide, and then slowly stepped toward him, ignoring the chaos around. Kale realized that the dragon was starting to trust him more than it trusted the shelter itself. That night, Kale stayed longer, observing the dragon as it slept. He noticed a faint shimmer in its eyes when it dreamed, a glimmer of light that suggested something more than just sadness. He wondered if the dragon had abilities unknown even to the shelter staff. Perhaps that was why it had been abandoned, feared by those who didn't understand it. Kale knew he had to be careful. If the shelter discovered anything unusual about the dragon, they might take it away, or worse. But he also felt a growing excitement, a sense that this dragon was special, perhaps more special than anyone realized. On the 7th day, Kale decided to try something different. He opened the cage door slightly, just enough for the dragon to step out if it wanted. The dragon froze, staring at the open space, its body tense. Kale sat quietly, not moving, not speaking, just letting the dragon make its own choice. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, almost hesitantly, the dragon stepped out, its small claws tapping softly on the metal floor. Kale held his hand out again, and this time the dragon pressed its snout gently against it. A surge of joy filled Kale. He had never felt such a connection with a creature before. The dragon was letting him into its world, trusting him completely for the first time. That evening, Kale left the shelter feeling both exhilarated and worried. The dragon had made progress, but it was still vulnerable, still fragile. He knew the shelter would never truly understand it, never appreciate its worth. But he also knew that something powerful was awakening in the dragon, something that could change their lives forever. Over the next few days, Kale began to test the dragon's abilities subtly. He noticed that when he whispered certain words, the dragon's eyes would glow faintly, and small sparks of energy would ripple across its scales. The dragon could manipulate energy in ways Kale had never seen before, but it only did so when it felt safe and calm. The realization hit Kale like a lightning bolt. This was no ordinary dragon. This was a creature with powers beyond imagination, a dragon that could change the balance of the worlds if it were trained, cared for, and loved. But with great power came great danger. If the shelter discovered this ability, they would exploit it, control it, or even destroy the dragon. Kale understood that he had to act quickly. He had to gain the dragon's complete trust before making any move to free it. One evening, as the shelter's lights dimmed, Kale whispered softly to the dragon, "I know you're scared, but I promise, I will protect you. One day, you will fly free, and no one will ever hurt you again." The dragon tilted its head, blinking slowly, and nuzzled his hand. It was a small gesture, but for Kale, it meant everything. The bond had been formed. The first connection had been made. That night, Kale lay awake in his quarters, thinking about the challenges ahead. Freeing the dragon would not be easy. The shelter was secure, and the staff were watchful. But he had a secret advantage now: trust. The dragon trusted him, and that trust was stronger than any lock, stronger than any barrier. The thought made Kale smile. Tomorrow, he would plan the next step, the first move toward freedom. But for tonight, he allowed himself to savor this moment. The dragon was no longer just a sad, lonely creature in a cage. It was a friend, a companion, and perhaps, the most extraordinary ally he would ever have. Kale knew the journey had only just begun, but he felt ready. Together, they would face the unknown, and perhaps, change their destinies forever. Kale returned to the shelter the next morning with a mixture of excitement and caution. The small dragon, now showing more confidence, greeted him with a soft, musical chirp. It had moved closer to the front of the enclosure, its gray scales glinting faintly in the morning light. Kale felt a surge of hope. The bond was growing stronger, and he knew that the next step was to understand the dragon better. Today, he would observe more carefully, paying attention to the dragon's actions and reactions. He laid out some crystals near the cage, just like before, and spoke softly. "Good morning. Ready to explore a little?" The dragon's eyes brightened, and it stepped forward, sniffing the crystals, but instead of eating immediately, it did something unexpected. A tiny spark of blue energy flickered from its snout and danced in the air. Kale froze, astonished. He had never seen anything like it. The spark didn't hurt the dragon or the surroundings. It seemed playful, curious, almost conscious of its own power. Kale held his breath, watching as the dragon repeated the action, tiny sparks of energy forming small shapes in the air. He realized that this dragon had abilities beyond anything he had imagined. It could manipulate energy, perhaps even shape it with intention. But why had the shelter kept this hidden? Why had no one mentioned it? Kale decided to test it carefully. He reached out his hand slowly and whispered, "Show me again, but gently." The dragon cocked its head, blinked, and then a small ribbon of blue energy stretched from its snout toward Kale's hand. It did not touch him, but the energy hovered just above, shimmering softly. Kale felt a strange warmth and a tingle in his fingers, as if the energy recognized his presence. The dragon clicked softly, almost like a laugh, and the spark disappeared. Kale's mind raced. This power was incredible, but dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. The shelter would never allow a dragon like this to remain free. They would exploit it, study it, control it, or destroy it. Kale knew he had to protect the dragon, but he also needed to understand the limits of its abilities. Over the next few days, Kale observed more closely. The dragon's powers seemed linked to its emotions. When it was afraid, small sparks would flicker uncontrollably. When it was calm and curious, the energy formed shapes, patterns, almost like a language. Kale tried to speak gently, tell stories, and watch how the dragon responded. Sometimes, the energy would form shapes resembling stars or dragons, and Kale realized the dragon was communicating in its own way. One evening, while the shelter was quiet and most dragons were asleep, Kale tried a new experiment. He whispered, "Can you show me something you've never shown anyone?" The dragon hesitated, blinking its wide, expressive eyes. Then, with a deep, soft hum, a stream of blue energy shot from its snout, forming a miniature whirlwind in the air. The energy swirled and twisted, shimmering like liquid light, and then condensed into a small orb that hovered above Kale's hand. He reached out carefully, and the orb floated gently onto his palm without burning or shocking him. Kale stared in awe. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The dragon had created energy in a controlled form, something powerful, something alive. He knew that if the shelter saw this, they would take it immediately, but he also realized that the dragon had not shown this to anyone before. It trusted him. The next day, Kale returned with a new plan. He wanted to build trust further by letting the dragon experiment with its abilities in a safe way. He set up a small area in the corner of the shelter where the dragon could move freely without being disturbed. He watched as the dragon stepped cautiously into the space and began to play with its energy. Sparks flew in arcs, forming patterns in the air, and Kale noticed that the dragon's eyes sparkled with delight. It was laughing in its own way, finally expressing joy after so long. Kale realized that the dragon's power was not just dangerous, it was beautiful, creative, and intelligent. The dragon was capable of incredible things if nurtured and protected. That evening, Kale whispered softly, "You're amazing. You're stronger than anyone knows." The dragon responded with a soft hum and nudged his hand. Over the next few days, Kale experimented carefully, observing the dragon's abilities while keeping it hidden from the shelter staff. He learned that the dragon could manipulate energy into light, create small bursts of force, and even generate brief illusions that looked real. Kale understood that these powers could be used for protection, for escape, or for creation. But he also knew that the shelter authorities would never allow such a creature to remain free. One afternoon, a loud alarm sounded in the shelter, startling all the dragons. Kale froze, worried that someone had seen the dragon's abilities. He rushed to the enclosure, and the small dragon shrank back, trembling. Kale knelt, speaking softly, "It's okay. Nothing will happen. I'm here." Slowly, the dragon relaxed and, almost instinctively, released a small shield of shimmering energy between itself and the approaching humans. The shield was delicate, temporary, but strong enough to protect it for a few moments. Kale's heart raced. The dragon had instinctively used its power to protect itself. He realized then that its abilities were linked not only to emotions but also to survival instincts. This was both a blessing and a danger. Kale knew he had to act soon. The shelter could not be trusted, and the dragon's powers would only grow stronger. If they were discovered, it could mean the end for the small dragon. That night, Kale stayed longer than usual, thinking about the challenges ahead. He knew that the bond they had formed was fragile but strong enough to plan an escape. He whispered softly to the dragon, "I promise, no one will ever hurt you. We will find a way out." The dragon blinked slowly and pressed its small snout against his hand. Kale felt a surge of determination. He had discovered the dragon's secret ability, but now he had a responsibility. He could not simply observe. He had to protect, guide, and prepare the dragon for what lay ahead. Over the next few days, Kale practiced with the dragon in secret, letting it explore its powers in small, controlled ways. The dragon learned quickly, shaping energy, forming light patterns, and even creating brief illusions. Kale watched in awe. Each day, the dragon grew more confident, more playful, and more aware of its potential. But he also noticed the dragon's eyes sometimes flicker with fear when shelter staff approached, reminding him that danger was always near. One evening, as the sun set and the shelter was quiet, Kale whispered again, One day, we will be free, and you can use your powers without fear. But for now, we must be careful. The dragon tilted its head, blinked slowly, and nudged his hand. That simple gesture filled Kale with hope and courage. He knew the journey ahead would be dangerous, but he was ready. Together, they would face whatever came next, and perhaps, change not just their lives, but the fate of many worlds. The secret ability had been revealed, but it was only the beginning. A bond had been forged stronger than metal, stronger than fear, and Kale understood that this small dragon, once lonely and sad, could become extraordinary if given the chance. Kale arrived at the shelter before sunrise, the cold morning air biting at his face. He moved quietly through the empty corridors, careful not to alert the staff who were beginning their morning rounds. The small dragon was already awake, its dull gray scales catching the dim light, and it stepped forward the moment it saw Kale. The dragon chirped softly, as if asking what the plan was for today. Kale crouched beside it, speaking in his low, calm voice. Today, we take the first step. We start thinking about getting you out of here, for good. The dragon tilted its head, blinking slowly. Kale could feel the mixture of excitement and fear radiating from it. It was ready, but it did not fully understand the danger ahead. He studied the shelter carefully. Guards walked in predictable patterns, cameras monitored every corner, and high-tech locks sealed each enclosure. The human needed a plan that was smart, patient, and precise. He spent hours watching, memorizing routines, and noting gaps in the guards' patrols. Each detail mattered. That evening, Kale began to explain to the dragon in his own way. He could not use words it fully understood, but he could communicate through gestures, soft sounds, and gentle touches. He pointed to the cage door, then to the hall beyond, and then back to the dragon. He tapped his chest and then made a motion like walking. Slowly, the dragon seemed to understand. It stepped toward the door, paused, then looked at Kale. Trust had been built, and Kale knew that without trust, no plan could succeed. Over the next few days, Kale tested small movements. He taught the dragon to follow him quietly, to pause when he paused, and to wait for the right moment. They practiced in the enclosure when no one was watching. The dragon's abilities became useful in small ways. It could produce soft light to illuminate dark corners, and it had learned to create minor illusions to distract guards if necessary. Kale was amazed at how quickly the dragon adapted. It was intelligent, clever, and increasingly courageous. But he also saw the fear in its eyes. The shelter was a place of rules, of control, and the dragon had been broken there for a long time. Kale knew that one mistake could endanger both of them. One night, Kale crept into the shelter with a small device he had built to hack the security system. The dragon followed, its small claws silent on the metal floor. They moved past the sleeping dragons, past cameras, and toward the first locked door. Kale's heart pounded. He whispered, "Stay close, follow my lead, and no sudden moves." The dragon blinked, its body tense, but it obeyed. Kale used the device, and the lock clicked open. They moved slowly through the hallways, every step calculated, every breath controlled. Suddenly, a guard's voice echoed nearby. Kale froze, and the dragon crouched, pressing itself against his legs. The guard walked past without noticing them. Kale exhaled slowly, relieved. The first test had worked. The next challenge was the main gate, the exit that would lead them to freedom. Kale spent days observing the patterns of guards, the timing of doors opening and closing, and the positions of cameras. He realized that the window of opportunity was small, just a few minutes each day when the area was least monitored. He marked the times in his mind, preparing for the moment when they would have to move. Meanwhile, the dragon practiced its abilities. It learned to control small bursts of energy, to create short distractions, and to communicate silently with Kale using subtle gestures. They were ready, but the risk was immense. One afternoon, Kale discovered that the shelter staff had noticed small anomalies, a cage slightly moved, an energy spark that no one could explain. Suspicion was growing. Kale knew that if they waited too long, the dragon would be discovered, and the plan would fail. That night, Kale spoke softly to the dragon, "Tomorrow is the day. We leave, and nothing will stop us. The dragon tilted its head, blinking slowly, and nudged his hand. Kale felt a surge of determination. He had spent weeks preparing, building trust, and understanding the dragon's abilities. Now, the moment of action had arrived. The following morning, Kale approached the dragon, holding a small satchel with supplies, food, water, and a few tools they might need outside the shelter. He opened the cage door slowly. The dragon stepped out without hesitation, ready to follow. Kale whispered, "Stay close. Watch me. We can do this." They moved quietly through the halls, avoiding guards and cameras. The dragon used its energy to create small illusions, shifting shadows and lights to distract anyone who might notice them. Each step was tense, each corner turned with care. At the final corridor leading to the main gate, a guard appeared unexpectedly. Kale froze, and the dragon instinctively released a small flash of energy, dazzling the guard for a few seconds. Kale took the chance, running forward, with the dragon following closely. The alarm began to sound, loud and piercing. Guards shouted and ran after them, but Kale had anticipated this. He led the dragon through a series of maintenance doors and narrow passageways he had discovered during his observations. The dragon's small size and agility allowed it to move quickly and silently. They reached the outer perimeter, the massive gate looming ahead. Kale activated the hack device again, and the gate slowly began to open. Outside, the cold morning light of the world greeted them. The dragon paused for a moment, looking at the open sky, then leapt forward instinctively. Kale followed, heart racing. They had made it beyond the shelter, beyond the control of the staff who had tried to break the dragon. They were free, at least for now. Kale knew the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and dangers awaited them beyond the shelter walls. But for the first time, the dragon was not trapped, not broken, not alone. It had a companion it trusted completely, and that was the beginning of their adventure. As they ran through the open plains beyond the shelter, Kale looked at the dragon, its scales glinting, eyes wide with excitement and cautious fear. He whispered softly, "We did it. But this is only the start." The dragon responded with a soft chirp, nudging his hand. They moved together, careful but determined, toward the horizon. Kale's mind raced with plans for the next steps: where to hide, how to stay safe, and how to understand the full extent of the dragon's powers. He knew the shelter would not give up easily, and that one day, they would come looking for the dragon. But for now, they were free, and freedom brought both joy and responsibility. Kale and the dragon ran together, their bond stronger than ever, ready to face the unknown challenges of the galaxy. The escape was complete, but the adventure was only beginning. Every step they took was a step toward a future filled with danger, mystery, and wonder, and Kale felt a thrill he had never known before. He had saved the loneliest dragon, and in doing so, had discovered a companion unlike any other. Together, they would write a story that no one in the galaxy would ever forget. Kale and the dragon ran through the open plains beyond the shelter, the early morning light casting long shadows across the ground. The dragon paused on a small hill, its gray scales glinting faintly, and looked at the horizon. Kale knelt beside it, placing a gentle hand on its side. "It's time," he whispered. "Time to see what you can really do." The dragon tilted its head, blinking, uncertain. It had never flown freely before, and the memory of confinement weighed heavily on it. Kale understood the fear but knew that the dragon was ready. He had watched it grow stronger, more confident, and more trusting over the past weeks. The first flight would not only test its courage but also strengthen their bond. Kale guided the dragon to a higher hill, giving it a clear view of the valley below. "Just trust yourself," he said softly. "I'll be here with you." The dragon stretched its small wings, muscles trembling with tension. It took a small hop into the air and immediately fell back, flapping frantically. Kale caught it instinctively, steadying its body. "It's okay. Try again," he encouraged. The dragon's eyes reflected a mix of fear and determination. On the third attempt, it managed to lift slightly, hovering for a moment before tumbling to the ground. Kale laughed softly, not mocking but celebrating the small victory. "You're learning," he said. Keep trying. Hours passed with repeated attempts. Kale stayed patient, giving the dragon confidence and reassurance. Slowly, the dragon began to understand how to balance its body in the air, how to flap its wings rhythmically, and how to trust its instincts. Each tiny success was celebrated with soft chirps and nudges from the dragon, as if it recognized Kale's pride in it. Finally, as the sun climbed higher, the dragon launched itself from the hilltop with confidence. Its wings caught the wind perfectly, and for the first time, it soared above the plains. Kale ran alongside, keeping pace, watching in awe. The dragon's eyes sparkled, and it let out a joyful chirp that echoed across the valley. The freedom of flight was exhilarating, and Kale could see the happiness radiating from its small, powerful body. But the flight was not without danger. A sudden gust of wind caught the dragon off guard, tossing it sideways. Kale shouted, running to help, but the dragon instinctively corrected itself, flapping rapidly and regaining balance. Kale felt a surge of pride. The dragon was learning not just to fly but to survive in the open skies, trusting both its instincts and Kale's guidance. They practiced for hours, the dragon soaring higher each time, looping and turning with increasing skill. Kale stayed close, guiding, encouraging, and protecting it from dangers they could not yet see. As the day progressed, they explored nearby cliffs and forests. The dragon became more confident, using its energy abilities subtly to glide longer and stabilize itself in tricky winds. Kale realized that the combination of its flight and powers made it a truly extraordinary creature, capable of incredible feats if trained and nurtured. During a break on a cliff edge, Kale noticed the dragon staring at the horizon, ears twitching. Something was coming. In the distance, he saw a glint of metal and movement, drones from the shelter, scanning the area. Kale's heart raced. The shelter had found them sooner than he expected. He whispered urgently, "Get ready. We might have to move fast." The dragon responded instinctively, eyes narrowing, wings tensing. Kale knew they had to act quickly. He pointed to the sky, signaling the dragon to fly higher. With a powerful leap, the dragon soared upward, gaining speed. Kale ran to catch up, leaping onto the dragon's back. The small dragon's wings flapped powerfully, lifting them both into the sky. The wind rushed past them, and Kale held on tightly, amazed at the strength and control the dragon displayed. The drones below followed, but the dragon's energy abilities allowed it to create small bursts of light and illusions, confusing the machines. Kale realized that the dragon was learning to use its powers strategically, combining flight and energy manipulation to protect them both. They flew over forests, rivers, and valleys, escaping the shelter's reach for the moment. Kale could see the joy in the dragon's eyes, the exhilaration of freedom mingled with the thrill of danger. It was a new world for both of them, full of possibilities and challenges. As night approached, they found a safe plateau to land. The dragon curled up, exhausted but happy, and Kale gently stroked its scales. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." The dragon nuzzled his hand, soft chirps echoing in the quiet evening. Kale knew that this was only the beginning. Flight had opened a new realm of freedom, but it had also made them visible to anyone searching from above. He had to think carefully about the next steps. That night, Kale and the dragon rested, the stars above them bright and endless. Kale spoke softly, telling stories of distant planets, hidden valleys, and dragons that flew freely across galaxies. The dragon listened, occasionally chirping or nudging his hand, as if understanding every word. Kale knew he had to train the dragon further, to build its confidence, and to prepare it for the challenges that lay ahead. They would need speed, stealth, and cunning if they were to survive and stay free. Over the next few days, Kale and the dragon practiced flying together. He taught it to respond to subtle commands, to use its energy abilities for short bursts of speed, and to avoid detection. The dragon grew stronger, faster, and more confident. Kale watched in awe, realizing that their bond was more than friendship, it was partnership. Each flight brought them closer, each challenge strengthened their trust, and each success filled Kale with hope. He knew the shelter would not give up easily. They would come looking for the dragon, and soon. But Kale felt ready. Together, they had discovered the joy of freedom, the thrill of flight, and the power of trust. As they soared one evening under the orange glow of sunset, Kale whispered to the dragon, "The world is big, and there are dangers ahead, but we'll face them together." The dragon responded with a soft chirp and a flap of its wings, as if agreeing. Kale felt a surge of determination. They had survived the first flight, escaped immediate danger, and discovered the dragon's full potential in the skies. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, threats, and wonders, but Kale and the dragon were ready. Together, they would face whatever came next, flying high above the constraints of the past and the shadows of the shelter. The first flight had not only been a test of courage but a declaration: they were free, and nothing could hold them back. The adventure had only just begun, and Kale knew that with the dragon by his side, they could overcome any obstacle the universe placed before them. Kale and the dragon soared through the skies for hours, the wind rushing past them, carrying the smell of forests and rivers far below. The small dragon had grown confident, its wings strong and agile, and Kale held tightly, amazed at its speed and control. As the sun climbed higher, they approached a strange, distant planet, one Kale had never visited before. From above, it looked beautiful. Mountains rose sharply into the clouds, rivers twisted like silver ribbons, and forests stretched endlessly. But Kale felt a shiver of caution. Something about the planet was different, almost dangerous, and his instincts told him to be alert. The dragon chirped softly, sensing Kale's tension. Kale whispered, "Stay close. We don't know what's down there." They descended carefully, landing on a rocky plateau near the edge of a dense forest. The air was thick, humid, and carried a strange scent Kale could not identify. He noticed the dragon's scales bristling slightly, wings flexing instinctively. The planet was alive, vibrant, and threatening all at once. As they moved forward, the ground beneath them seemed unstable, with rocks shifting and small fissures opening unexpectedly. Kale kept close to the dragon, guiding it over dangerous terrain, pointing out safe paths and warning of loose stones. The dragon's sharp eyes spotted small movements in the shadows, creatures with glowing eyes watching them silently. Kale's heart raced. They were not alone. Suddenly, a large predator leapt from the underbrush, claws extended, teeth bared. Kale shouted, and the dragon flared its wings, creating a burst of shimmering energy. The creature yelped and recoiled, startled by the light, giving Kale enough time to move the dragon to safety. They ran together, the dragon twisting and turning through trees, dodging obstacles, and learning quickly how to survive in this dangerous environment. Kale realized that the dragon's powers were not just extraordinary, they were essential. Without them, they would never make it far on this planet. They paused near a river to rest, the water sparkling in the sunlight. The dragon lowered its head to drink, its eyes scanning the forest constantly. Kale took a moment to observe. He noticed the dragon's energy abilities had grown stronger. Small sparks now formed naturally around it, reacting to emotions and threats automatically. It had learned to defend itself without thinking, instinct guiding its powers. Kale felt both pride and concern. The dragon was extraordinary, but the dangers around them were very real. As they continued deeper into the forest, the shadows thickened. Strange vines twisted around trees, and the ground was uneven and soft. Kale noticed small, glowing insects hovering in the air, their light flickering and creating illusions of movement. The dragon chirped, its body tense, wings slightly extended. Kale whispered, "Stay close. Watch everything. Don't trust anything that moves too easily." They moved slowly, every step cautious, every sound amplified in the stillness of the forest. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Kale lost his balance and grabbed the dragon instinctively. A section of the forest floor collapsed, revealing a deep chasm below. Rocks tumbled into the darkness, and Kale felt a rush of adrenaline. The dragon reacted immediately, flapping its wings to lift them both above the gap, energy sparks flashing as it stabilized in midair. Kale's heart pounded. The planet was alive in a way he had never experienced. Every moment could be dangerous, but the dragon was adapting, learning, and surviving. They landed on the other side, the forest even darker and thicker. Strange noises echoed around them, growls, whispers, and the distant flapping of wings. Kale realized they were being watched by more than just insects. He whispered to the dragon, "We need to find shelter. Safe, hidden, and strong." The dragon nodded in its way, chirping softly, leading the way through the dense underbrush. After walking carefully for hours, they reached a small cave partially hidden by rocks and vines. The dragon slipped inside first, checking for danger, then Kale followed. The cave was dark but dry, and Kale quickly set up a small area for them to rest. The dragon curled up, exhausted from the long day and the continuous stress of the environment. Kale studied the cave walls, noticing strange markings, almost like ancient symbols. He wondered who, or what, might have left them. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the sounds of unseen creatures. Kale knew the forest was filled with predators, some intelligent, some instinct-driven, and all capable of hunting both him and the dragon. That night, Kale spoke softly, "We've made it this far, but the planet is not friendly. We must stay alert." The dragon responded with a low, musical hum, pressing its head gently against Kale's hand. He realized that despite the dangers, their bond had grown stronger. Together, they could survive almost anything. Over the next days, they explored the planet cautiously. They encountered strange plants that moved as if alive, rivers that flowed backward, and cliffs that seemed impossible to climb. Kale used his knowledge of survival, but the dragon's abilities became increasingly crucial. It created energy shields to protect them from falling debris, manipulated light to distract predators, and even used bursts of energy to jump across gaps. Kale marveled at its intelligence and adaptability. One day, while exploring a deep valley, they stumbled upon a massive creature unlike any Kale had ever seen. Its body was covered in thick, armored scales, eyes glowing red, and it let out a deafening roar. The dragon's body tensed, and energy sparks danced across its scales. Kale whispered urgently, "We cannot fight it head-on. We need to outsmart it." Using the dragon's energy illusions, they created false images to confuse the creature while moving stealthily to a safe path. The plan worked, but Kale realized that every day on this planet would be a test of skill, courage, and strategy. Despite the constant danger, the dragon grew stronger, braver, and more confident. Kale felt proud, but he also understood the responsibility he carried. The dragon was extraordinary, and he had to protect it at all costs. Nights were filled with quiet moments where Kale told stories of distant worlds, explaining hope, courage, and freedom. The dragon listened intently, sometimes chirping softly, or nudging his hand. Kale realized that these moments of connection were as important as survival skills. As they rested in the cave one night, the wind outside carrying strange sounds of the forest, Kale whispered, "We can survive here, but we must always be ready. This planet will not forgive mistakes." The dragon pressed its head to his hand, a silent promise of partnership. Kale smiled faintly, feeling both relief and determination. They had survived the dangerous planet so far, but he knew even greater challenges lay ahead. Every step tested them, but together, they were learning, adapting, and growing stronger. The small gray dragon, once lonely and scared, had become a powerful, clever companion, capable of facing threats that Kale could not have imagined. And Kale understood that their journey was far from over. The planet was dangerous, the galaxy even more so, but they had each other. That bond, trust, and courage would be their greatest strength in the trials to come. Kale and the dragon had survived days on the dangerous planet, navigating forests, cliffs, and valleys filled with hidden predators. Each day had been a test, but something remarkable had changed between them. The dragon no longer flinched at Kale's touch. It chirped softly when he spoke and even nudged his hand with its small snout when it wanted reassurance. The bond they had formed was growing stronger, built on trust, patience, and shared survival. Kale watched the dragon carefully as it rested on a rocky ledge one afternoon, its wings folded neatly, eyes scanning the horizon. He realized that it was not just trust but understanding. The dragon knew him, understood his intentions, and in return, he had learned to read its subtle movements, the flicker of its eyes, the twitch of its ears, the small sparks of energy that danced across its scales when it was excited or alert. Kale had always believed that dragons were magnificent creatures, proud and intelligent, but this one had surpassed his expectations. It was clever, emotional, and capable of extraordinary feats, and Kale felt a sense of responsibility heavier than he had ever carried. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, Kale and the dragon found a calm clearing near a sparkling river. He knelt beside the dragon, running his hand over its back. "You've come a long way," he whispered. The dragon chirped, a musical sound that echoed softly in the quiet forest. Kale smiled faintly. The journey had been dangerous, but it had also been transformative. They had faced threats together, and through every challenge, their trust had deepened. The dragon now responded to subtle gestures, following Kale's lead without hesitation, anticipating his intentions, and even using its energy powers in ways that complemented his actions. One night, as they rested in a small cave, Kale spoke softly, telling stories of distant planets, legendary dragons, and heroes who had faced impossible odds. The dragon listened intently, occasionally nudging his hand or making soft clicking sounds. Kale realized that these moments were as important as any physical training. The emotional bond between them was as crucial as the dragon's abilities. Through connection, they were learning to communicate, to understand, and to rely on each other fully. Over the next few days, Kale encouraged the dragon to explore its powers further. He guided it to practice creating energy shields, illusions, and bursts of force, always emphasizing control and precision. The dragon grew stronger with each attempt, and Kale marveled at its intelligence and adaptability. He began to see patterns in its behavior, understanding when it was hesitant, when it was curious, and when it was fearful. The dragon, in turn, seemed to recognize Kale's moods and intentions, responding with gestures, energy sparks, and subtle movements. It was as if they shared a language beyond words, a silent communication built on trust and experience. One afternoon, while exploring a dense forest, Kale noticed something unusual. The dragon stopped abruptly, ears flicking, body tense. In the shadows, a faint glow moved, another creature, intelligent and aware of their presence. Kale signaled the dragon to stay calm. They crouched low, observing quietly. The creature was large, covered in dark scales, with glowing eyes that reflected curiosity and caution. It did not attack immediately. Instead, it watched, circling at a distance. Kale whispered, "It's observing us. Let's see what it does." The dragon chirped softly, small sparks of energy dancing across its scales. Kale realized that the dragon's presence and abilities were affecting the creature, creating curiosity instead of aggression. Slowly, the creature approached, still cautious. The dragon held its ground but did not display fear. It was a delicate balance of power and trust. Kale extended a hand gently, and the creature hesitated, then lowered its head slightly, acknowledging them without threat. Kale felt a surge of pride. The dragon's courage and confidence had grown, and their bond had allowed them to face potential danger without panic. Over the next few days, Kale continued to observe and train the dragon, teaching it to respond to both physical and emotional cues. They practiced flying together, using the dragon's energy abilities strategically, and navigating difficult terrain. The dragon learned to anticipate threats, protect Kale instinctively, and act with intelligence and creativity. Their teamwork became seamless, a perfect combination of human reasoning and dragon instinct. Kale noticed subtle changes in the dragon's behavior. It would nuzzle his hand when unsure, chirp when happy, and emit small bursts of energy when excited. Each action was meaningful, and Kale felt a deep emotional connection growing stronger with each passing day. He began to understand that the dragon was more than a companion. It was a partner, a friend, and a creature with its own thoughts, emotions, and intelligence. One evening, as they rested on a cliff overlooking a glowing river below, Kale spoke softly, "You've become stronger, braver, and smarter than I ever imagined. I'm proud of you." The dragon chirped, nudging his hand and spreading its wings slightly, almost as if responding to his words. Kale smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. Their bond was now unbreakable, forged through trust, survival, and shared experience. But Kale also knew that challenges lay ahead. The shelter would not give up easily, and the galaxy was full of dangers they could not yet foresee. They would need to face enemies, navigate unknown worlds, and protect each other from threats that were beyond imagination. The dragon's abilities, while extraordinary, were still developing, and Kale understood that patience, guidance, and care were essential. One night, as they rested under a sky filled with stars, Kale reflected on their journey. The dragon had come from loneliness, sadness, and fear, and now it was learning courage, trust, and freedom. Kale realized that their bond was not just about survival or adventure. It was about understanding, companionship, and mutual respect. The dragon had given him loyalty and trust, and he had given it care and protection. They had become more than human and dragon. They had become partners, ready to face the unknown together. The following days were filled with training, exploration, and quiet moments of connection. Kale encouraged the dragon to practice its energy abilities creatively, to fly freely without fear, and to trust its instincts. The dragon responded with increasing confidence, displaying intelligence, courage, and playfulness. Kale felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. The bond between them was stronger than any fear or danger they had faced. They had survived a dangerous planet, faced predators, and discovered abilities that could change their lives. Through it all, their connection had deepened, becoming a source of strength, guidance, and hope. As they flew together one evening, wings cutting through the glowing sunset sky, Kale whispered softly, "We're ready for whatever comes next. Together, nothing can stop us." The dragon chirped in agreement, energy sparks dancing along its scales. Kale knew that the shelter would continue to search for them, that the galaxy held more dangers than they could imagine, but he also knew that their bond was now their greatest strength. No challenge, predator, or enemy could break the trust and connection they had forged. Kale and the dragon had been traveling across the dangerous planet for weeks, surviving predators, navigating treacherous terrain, and learning to trust each other completely. The bond between them had grown unbreakable, a silent understanding that allowed them to communicate without words. One evening, as they rested on a high cliff overlooking a valley glowing with strange bioluminescent plants, Kale noticed something unusual. In the distance, a dark fleet of ships hovered above the forests. They moved with precision and coordination, their lights scanning the terrain below. Kale's heart sank. He had feared the shelter would come after them, but seeing this fleet confirmed it. They had not only found him and the dragon, they were organized, prepared, and dangerous. The dragon stiffened beside him, wings flexing instinctively, energy sparks dancing along its scales. It sensed the threat before Kale could fully process it. Kale whispered, "Stay calm. We need to observe first." They crouched low, hidden among rocks and trees, watching as the ships descended toward the valley below. Figures emerged, tall and armored, moving with purpose. Kale recognized them instantly, agents of the shelter, enhanced with advanced weapons and technology designed specifically to capture dragons. His mind raced. These were not ordinary humans. They were trained, ruthless, and equipped with devices that could detect and control energy. He knew the dragon was at risk, and he had to act fast. The dragon clicked softly, small energy sparks flickering around its snout. Kale understood its emotions: fear, anger, and readiness to defend. "We need a plan," he whispered, scanning the terrain. "There are too many to confront directly. We need strategy, stealth, and speed." Over the next hours, Kale observed their movements carefully. The agents spread through the forest systematically, using advanced scanners to detect energy signatures. Every step they took was precise, efficient, and threatening. Kale realized that their enemies were not just after the dragon, they wanted it for its extraordinary powers. If captured, the dragon would be used as a weapon, experimented on and controlled. Kale's chest tightened. He had come too far to let that happen. He turned to the dragon, whispering, "We need to move. Now. Can you follow me silently?" The dragon responded with a soft chirp, energy sparks flickering like fireflies. Together, they slipped through the shadows, avoiding scanners and patrols. Kale relied on his understanding of the dragon's abilities to mask their energy signature and blend with the forest. The agents were skilled, but Kale's knowledge of the terrain, combined with the dragon's agility and powers, gave them a slim advantage. As they moved deeper into the forest, Kale realized they needed more than stealth, they needed to fight if necessary. He began training the dragon to use its energy abilities in creative ways, creating illusions to distract, small bursts of force to push enemies off balance, and light to blind sensors temporarily. The dragon adapted quickly, learning to trust Kale's guidance while relying on its instincts. One night, as they rested in a dense grove, Kale studied the approaching threat. He whispered, "They're not just following us, they're learning our patterns. We need to stay unpredictable." The dragon chirped, nudging his hand, and Kale realized that it understood strategy better than he had imagined. Together, they began to prepare defenses, mapping escape routes, and practicing coordinated movements that would allow them to evade or confront enemies if cornered. Days passed, and the agents closed in, using drones and energy scanners to track them. Kale and the dragon moved silently, avoiding confrontation, but tension built with each passing moment. The dragon's energy powers had grown stronger, and Kale trusted it completely, but he also knew the enemies had technology and training designed to neutralize such abilities. One evening, Kale noticed a formation of agents setting up a perimeter near a river that marked their path of escape. He realized they were trying to trap them, forcing them into a corner. Kale whispered urgently, "We can't go through the river, they've prepared a trap. We need another way." The dragon clicked softly, scanning the area with instinctual awareness. It flew up briefly, creating a small burst of energy light that revealed a hidden canyon path beyond the river. Kale's heart leapt. The dragon had found a way, but it would require courage and precision to navigate. The next morning, they approached the trap. The agents were ready, scanners active, weapons drawn. Kale held the dragon close, whispering, "We need to move quickly. Trust me." The dragon flared its wings, energy sparks igniting around its body, and with a powerful leap, they launched toward the canyon. The agents fired devices designed to track and immobilize energy, but the dragon's quick movements and instinctive energy shields allowed them to evade capture. Kale felt his pulse racing. The canyon was narrow, cliffs rising sharply on either side. The dragon's energy abilities created temporary light bridges to help them navigate safely. They moved with speed and precision, each step coordinated, each flap of wings calculated. Behind them, the agents struggled to keep pace, some falling into the canyon below, unable to follow. Kale realized that the dragon's powers, combined with their bond and understanding, were more effective than brute force. They had turned the chase into an advantage, using terrain, skill, and intelligence to outmaneuver their enemies. As they reached the canyon's end, Kale and the dragon landed on a safe plateau. The wind rushed past them, carrying the sounds of the pursuing agents far below. Kale patted the dragon's scales, whispering, "We did it. You were amazing." The dragon chirped proudly, small sparks dancing along its wings. Kale realized that this encounter had changed them. They were no longer merely survivors, they were a team, capable of facing organized, intelligent threats. But he also knew this was only the beginning. The shelter would not give up, and the galaxy held greater dangers still. That night, as they rested under a sky filled with stars, Kale spoke softly, "They know we exist now. They'll come again, stronger, faster, and more prepared. But we are ready. Together, nothing can stop us." The dragon curled close, wings folding around him protectively, a silent affirmation of trust and partnership. Kale smiled faintly, feeling a mix of pride, determination, and anticipation. The enemy had been revealed, but they had survived the encounter, growing stronger in the process. Together, human and dragon were ready to face whatever came next, prepared for challenges that would test their courage, intelligence, and bond like never before. The adventure had become a battle for survival, but Kale knew one thing for certain. With the dragon by his side, they could overcome any threat, outsmart any enemy, and survive whatever the universe threw at them. Kale and the dragon had been traveling across the dangerous planet for weeks, evading the shelter's agents, navigating treacherous forests, cliffs, and rivers, and testing the limits of the dragon's abilities. Each day brought new challenges, and each night, they rested, recovering and preparing for what lay ahead. But Kale knew that the approaching threat would not give up. The agents were relentless, and sooner or later, they would force a confrontation that could determine both of their fates. One morning, as they rested on a rocky plateau overlooking a valley blanketed in mist, Kale noticed movement in the distance. A massive ship hovered above the valley, larger and more heavily armed than anything he had seen before. His heart sank. The shelter had sent their strongest force, a fleet equipped with advanced technology designed specifically to capture and control dragons. The dragon stiffened beside him, wings flexing, energy sparks flickering nervously. Kale whispered, "This is it. We must be ready for the ultimate test. Can you do this?" The dragon chirped softly, nudging his hand, and Kale felt the familiar surge of trust and determination. They could not run this time. They had to fight smart, using every ability, every trick, and every ounce of their bond. They moved quietly through the rocks, positioning themselves near a narrow canyon that could serve as both a trap and a shield. Kale whispered instructions, using gestures and subtle sounds. The dragon listened intently, energy sparks dancing across its scales as it prepared to act. As the massive ship descended, releasing armored agents to the valley below, Kale and the dragon watched carefully. The agents spread out, scanning with energy detectors, their weapons glowing and humming with dangerous power. Kale realized they were being herded into a controlled zone, where escape would be almost impossible. He clenched his fists. They would have to fight, but strategically, using the terrain, the dragon's powers, and their trust in each other. Suddenly, one of the agents spotted movement and fired a device that sent a pulse of energy toward them. The dragon reacted instantly, flaring its wings and creating a shield of shimmering energy that absorbed the impact. Kale felt the force but stayed steady, signaling the dragon to move forward. The shield flickered, energy sparks dancing as it stabilized. Kale whispered, "We need to split them up. Use illusions." The dragon flared its energy powers, creating multiple illusions of themselves that darted through the canyon, confusing the agents. Some fired at the illusions, wasting energy and time, while Kale and the Real dragon moved silently to higher ground. The battle had begun. Kale realized that brute force would not work, they had to be clever. Using the dragon's energy, they created distractions, small bursts of light, and shifting shadows that forced the agents to make mistakes. The dragon's agility and intelligence allowed it to maneuver through dangerous terrain, dodging attacks and responding instinctively to Kale's commands. Hours passed with tense movement, evasions, and small skirmishes. Kale and the dragon worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's actions, protecting each other from harm, and using the environment to their advantage. The canyon became a maze of illusions, energy bursts, and careful navigation, and Kale felt a surge of pride at the dragon's skill and bravery. But the enemy was relentless. The ship above deployed energy nets and advanced tracking devices, forcing Kale and the dragon to adapt continuously. The dragon emitted bursts of energy to deflect sensors, create temporary paths over cliffs, and shield both of them from incoming attacks. Kale moved with precision, guiding the dragon, observing the enemy, and anticipating every move. The ultimate test was not just survival, it was strategy, coordination, and trust. At one point, the agents forced them to a dead end, the canyon narrowing to jagged cliffs on either side. Kale whispered urgently, "We can't fight straight on. Use your power to open a path." The dragon's eyes brightened, small sparks of energy flickering faster as it concentrated. With a powerful flap of its wings, a surge of energy formed a temporary bridge of shimmering light across the gap in the canyon, just wide enough for them to leap to safety. Kale held on tightly as the dragon propelled them both forward, landing on solid ground beyond the agent's reach. They paused briefly, catching their breath, energy sparks flickering as the dragon calmed itself. Kale patted its side, whispering, "You're amazing. We're stronger together." But the battle was far from over. The agents regrouped quickly, using drones to track energy signatures. Kale knew that they had to make a final stand, to outsmart the enemy completely. He pointed to a narrow pass leading to a dense forest. "We can hide here, and then strike strategically. Use your illusions and energy bursts to confuse them." The dragon chirped softly, wings flexing, energy sparks dancing with anticipation. They moved into the forest, weaving through trees, using the dragon's abilities to mask their presence. The agents followed, unaware that each path they chose led to traps, illusions, and diversions. Kale realized that the dragon was thinking strategically, almost independently, anticipating his thoughts and enhancing their plan. The trust between them had reached a new level, an unspoken coordination that allowed them to act as one. The final confrontation came at a clearing near a cliff edge. The agents had tracked them, deploying heavy weapons to capture the dragon. Kale whispered, "Now, all we have is courage and trust. Are you ready?" The dragon chirped loudly, energy sparks blazing along its wings. They launched into action. The dragon created illusions of itself, some flying, some on the ground, confusing the agents. Bursts of energy shields protected them from incoming attacks, while Kale directed their movements, using knowledge of the terrain to gain an advantage. One agent tried to trap the dragon with an energy net, but the dragon reacted instinctively, flaring wings and sending a pulse of force that destroyed the net and sent the agent stumbling back. Kale realized that the combination of human strategy and dragon instinct was unstoppable when perfectly coordinated. The battle raged, intense and exhausting, but each move brought them closer to victory. Finally, the dragon emitted a concentrated blast of energy, powerful enough to disable the pursuing drones and agents temporarily. Kale seized the opportunity, guiding them to the cliff edge. With a powerful leap, the dragon carried Kale into the air, soaring above the forest, away from the remaining enemy forces. They flew over rivers, forests, and mountains, leaving the shelter's agents far below. Kale felt a surge of relief and pride. The ultimate test had been passed. They had faced overwhelming odds, used strategy, courage, and trust, and emerged victorious. The dragon chirped proudly, energy sparks dancing across its wings, and Kale patted its side gently. "We did it. Together, we are unstoppable." As they flew into the sunset, the planet stretched endlessly below them, dangers and mysteries still present, but their bond had proven stronger than any threat. Kale knew that the galaxy held even greater challenges, but with the dragon by his side, he felt ready for anything. They had faced the ultimate test, survived, and grown stronger. The adventure was far from over, but they had learned a powerful truth. Kale and the dragon soared high above the forests and mountains, the wind rushing past them, carrying the scent of freedom and danger alike. The battle with the shelter's agents was over, at least for now, and they had survived the ultimate test. The dragon's wings glimmered with energy sparks, and Kale held tightly, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. Every flap of its wings reminded him of the trust, courage, and partnership they had built through weeks of survival, flight, and danger. As they flew toward the horizon, Kale scanned the land below, searching for a safe place to rest and plan their next move. The planet stretched endlessly, full of forests, rivers, and mountains, both beautiful and treacherous. He knew they could not stay in one place too long. The shelter would continue to search, and new dangers would appear. Yet, for the first time, Kale felt hope. The dragon chirped softly, nudging his hand, and Kale smiled. Freedom was not just a moment, it was a journey, and they had taken the first steps together. They landed in a hidden valley surrounded by tall cliffs, the entrance obscured by thick vines and glowing plants. Kale and the dragon explored carefully, checking for predators and hazards. The valley was quiet, safe, and filled with strange, luminescent flora that cast a gentle light across the ground. Kale set up a small camp, gathering food and water while the dragon examined the area with cautious curiosity. It moved gracefully, wings folding neatly, eyes scanning for threats, energy sparks flickering softly as it explored. Kale realized that the valley could be their home, at least temporarily, a place to rest, recover, and plan for the future. As night fell, Kale and the dragon sat on a rocky ledge, looking up at the stars. The sky stretched endlessly, filled with countless worlds and possibilities. Kale whispered softly, "We've survived so much together. But this is just the beginning. There's a universe out there, and we can explore it, learn, and grow. Together." The dragon chirped, small sparks dancing across its scales, as if understanding every word. Kale smiled, feeling the warmth of their bond. They had faced loneliness, fear, danger, and enemies, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. Over the next days, Kale and the dragon adapted to the valley. They practiced flight, explored the surroundings, and honed the dragon's energy abilities. Kale realized that the dragon's powers were still developing, and that they could be used creatively for protection, travel, and even communication. The dragon responded eagerly, flaring wings and experimenting with bursts of energy, each time gaining more control and confidence. Together, they mapped safe routes, discovered hidden water sources, and even found small creatures that became part of their daily routine. Kale felt a sense of peace, knowing that despite the dangers, they were learning to survive independently. Yet, Kale knew that freedom came with responsibility. The shelter would not stop searching, and the galaxy held new threats that they could not yet foresee. He spent nights planning strategies, training the dragon, and imagining the worlds they could explore beyond this planet. The dragon, in turn, showed signs of understanding and curiosity beyond instinct. It would follow Kale, anticipate his movements, and even respond to subtle gestures and thoughts. The bond between them had evolved into something extraordinary, an unspoken language, a partnership built on trust, experience, and mutual respect. One morning, as the valley filled with light, Kale spotted distant movement on the horizon. A scout from the shelter? Or perhaps a new challenge entirely? He whispered to the dragon, "Whatever it is, we face it together." The dragon chirped, wings flexing, energy sparks flickering with readiness. Kale felt a thrill of determination. They had survived impossible odds, and now they were prepared for whatever came next. Days passed, and Kale continued to explore possibilities. He realized that the universe was vast, full of unknown worlds, strange creatures, and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. He imagined traveling with the dragon, encountering other beings, learning from them, and teaching them about courage, trust, and freedom. The dragon chirped in response, small sparks lighting its wings as if agreeing. Kale felt a deep sense of hope. They were not just survivors, they were pioneers, adventurers, and guardians of each other. One evening, as they sat on a cliff overlooking a glowing river, Kale reflected on the journey. The dragon had once been lonely, afraid, and trapped. Now, it was confident, powerful, and free. Kale realized that their partnership had transformed both of them. They had learned to rely on each other, to communicate beyond words, and to face danger with courage and strategy. The bond they shared was stronger than fear, danger, or distance. That night, Kale and the dragon lay under the stars, resting and planning. Kale whispered, "The shelter may come, the galaxy may challenge us, but we are ready. Together, we are unstoppable." The dragon pressed its head gently against his hand, a silent promise of loyalty, courage, and partnership. Kale smiled, feeling warmth and determination. They had survived the shelter, conquered the dangers of a hostile planet, and discovered their strengths and abilities. But most importantly, they had found each other. The universe stretched endlessly before them, full of unknown worlds, dangers, and wonders. Kale knew that their journey would continue, and that every day would bring new challenges and discoveries. But he also knew that with the dragon by his side, nothing could stop them. Freedom was no longer just a dream, it was a reality, built on courage, trust, and partnership. Kale and the dragon had faced loneliness, fear, enemies, and impossible odds, and had emerged victorious. Now, the galaxy awaited, full of mysteries, adventures, and opportunities. Together, they would explore new planets, encounter strange beings, and discover the true potential of their bond. They were more than human and dragon, they were partners, adventurers, and guardians of each other's freedom. As the first light of dawn touched the valley, Kale whispered, "A new beginning starts today. The universe is ours to explore." The dragon chirped loudly, wings flaring with energy, ready to take flight once more. Together, they leaped into the sky, soaring above the valley, across forests, rivers, and mountains, toward the endless horizon. The stars shone brightly, and Kale felt a surge of hope and determination. Their adventure had only just begun, and together, they would face every challenge, discover every wonder, and forge a story that no one in the galaxy would ever forget. Freedom, trust, and courage would guide them, and nothing could break the bond between human and dragon. A new chapter had begun, full of possibility, suspense, and excitement. The galaxy awaited, and Kale and the dragon were ready.